What if your life was never small? Only your thinking was. What if the distance between where you stand today and the future you wanted was never caused by money, luck, age, or bad timing, but by the quiet thoughts repeated inside your mind for years? Most people never notice them. They sound reasonable. This is enough for someone like me. I missed my chance. It's too late now. Repeat a thought long enough, and the mind stops questioning it. It accepts it as truth. This is the story of Daniel Brooks. No fame, no tragedy, no miracle waiting around the corner. Just an ordinary man with ordinary bills, ordinary exhaustion, and a dream buried so deep he stopped naming it. From the outside, nothing looked broken. That made it worse, because the most dangerous cages are rarely made of steel. They are built from beliefs repeated until they feel permanent. And freedom often begins with one painful question. What if life never closed on me? What if I closed on myself? Daniel Brooks lived outside Dallas, 41 years old, reliable, quiet, tired in a way sleep never fixed. Every night he wore the same security uniform, grabbed the same lunchbox, and drove the same highway to a warehouse at the edge of the city. Inside were cold lights, cameras, metal doors, and endless concrete aisles. Daniel checked gates, signed delivery logs, reset alarms, and solved small problems no one remembered the next day. If trucks arrived late, he handled it. If workers argued, he calmed it. If systems failed, he reported it. Then the night moved on without him. Nothing exciting happened. Nothing terrible happened either. That was the trap. His paycheck came on time. Rent was paid. Food stayed in the fridge. People called that stability. But Daniel felt himself fading. Sometimes around 3 a.m., he stood near the loading dock and watched trucks leave for places he would never see. They moved with purpose. He stayed still. And every time those red lights disappeared into darkness, the same thought returned. How did everyone else keep moving? While I became a man who only watches. Daniel had not always lived this way. In his 20s, he was full of energy, ideas, and hunger. He loved engines. While others wasted weekends, Daniel spent nights in garages learning how machines breathed, failed, and came back to life. He could hear a problem before most mechanics could find it. He dreamed of opening a small shop of his own. Nothing huge. Just one honest place with his name above the door. Brooks Auto Repair. He imagined loyal customers, steady work, and a future built by his own hands. Then his father suffered a stroke. Bills came fast, his mother needed help, his younger sister depended on him. So Daniel did what many responsible people do, he postponed himself. Just for now. He took a stable overnight security job until the family recovered. Temporary became normal. Months became years. The toolbox gathered dust. The notebook with his business plans disappeared into a closet. Whenever hope returned, fear arrived beside it. You're behind now. You missed your moment, you'll fail and lose everything. Slowly, survival replaced ambition, and the hardest truth was this: no one stole Daniel's dream. He surrendered it one practical excuse at a time. If you've ever abandoned your future quietly, stay with this story. The dangerous thing about Daniel's life was this: he didn't hate it. If he had been miserable enough, he might have changed years earlier, but his life was comfortable in the worst possible way. Safe enough to stay, empty enough to drain him slowly. The checks arrived on time. Co-workers respected him. Managers trusted him. People said, "You're lucky to have something steady." Daniel nodded as if they were right, but every week felt copied from the last. Same road, same badge, same cameras, same vending machine coffee, same sunrise he watched while driving home exhausted. At morning light, neighbors left for careers. Parents walked children to school. The city began another day. Daniel closed blackout curtains and went to sleep inside darkness. That was the hour he hated most, because silence told the truth. He wasn't building anything, he was preserving a routine. Years were not disappearing dramatically. They were leaking, quietly, one forgettable day at a time. And somewhere inside him, a younger version kept asking, "Is this really the life we gave up everything for?" One Sunday afternoon, unable to sleep after work, Daniel started cleaning his apartment. Sometimes people clean when life feels out of control. They organize shelves because they cannot organize themselves. He opened a hallway closet filled with coats and old boxes. Behind everything sat a red toolbox. Dust covered the lid. Daniel pulled it into the light and opened it slowly. Inside were polished wrenches, grease-stained gloves, receipts from parts stores, and a faded notebook. He opened the first page. Written in thick black marker were 4 words: Brooks Auto Repair, opening soon. Daniel stared at the page until his eyes burned. Opening soon. He had written that 13 years ago. A bitter laugh escaped him. Then the old voice returned. Too late now. That man is gone. Dreams belong to younger people. He nearly closed the box and shoved it back into darkness. Then his phone rang. His mother needed help with her car battery. Daniel looked at the tools, looked at the notebook, looked at the man he had become, and one thought landed harder than the rest. If I can still solve everyone else's problems, why have I accepted never solving my own? Daniel drove to his mother's house before sunset. The problem was simple: loose battery cable, dirty terminal. 10 minutes later, the engine started cleanly. His mother smiled from the porch. You still have the touch, Daniel shrugged. Just basic stuff. She looked at him carefully. No, she said softly, it was never basic to you. He said nothing, but those words followed him all night. At work, he walked the same warehouse aisles, checked the same locks, watched the same screens. Yet nothing felt the same. Every hallway seemed to ask him one question: what are you doing here? Near 2 a.m., Daniel sat alone in the security office under buzzing fluorescent light. For years he had blamed timing, money, responsibility, bad luck. Now another truth pushed through. Fear had worn those masks. Fear of failing publicly. Fear of starting late. Fear of discovering he still had talent and wasting it anyway. He covered his face, then a thought arrived. If fear built the last decade, what could one brave year build? For the first time in years, he whispered, I still want more. If this feels familiar, stay to the end. The next morning, Daniel came home tired but unable to sleep. Bills were still on the counter. His bank account had not changed. Fear was still there, but fear no longer sounded wise, it sounded repetitive. He pulled the old toolbox onto the kitchen floor and opened his laptop. He searched garage rental prices, permits, used equipment, and local repair demand. Nothing glamorous, just facts. That evening, he made one decision. He would give himself 1 hour a day. Not to dream, to build. 1 hour after each shift. 1 hour reclaimed from the life that had been swallowing him. The first morning, he made a budget sheet. The second, he listed tools he still needed. The third, he created a simple online page offering weekend break jobs, battery replacements, and diagnostics. No dramatic leap, no perfect timing, just movement, small, plain, almost invisible movement. But something powerful happens when a person keeps promises to themselves. That night, Daniel stood straighter at work, same uniform, same warehouse, same lights. Yet inside, he was no longer guarding only someone else's future. He had started rebuilding his own. 2 weeks passed. Most days nothing happened. Daniel worked nights, slept in fragments, and used his extra hour learning prices, answering messages, and posting simple offers online. Some mornings he felt hopeful, other mornings he felt ridiculous. Who starts over at 41? Who trusts a man working from an apartment parking lot? Still, he continued. Then one afternoon, his phone buzzed. A woman nearby needed help. Her car would not start. She had seen his local post. Daniel read the message 3 times. His hands shook harder than during any warehouse emergency. Because this was real now, he drove there with jumper cables, basic tools, and a pounding heart. The problem was minor. Weak battery, dirty terminals. 15 minutes later, the engine started. The woman smiled with relief. How much do I owe you? Daniel almost said nothing. Old habits. Instead, he gave a fair price. She paid without hesitation. Then she said 5 words he never forgot. I'll tell my neighbors too. It was not a fortune, not a miracle. But on the drive home, Daniel understood something priceless. The world had not rejected him. He had rejected himself first. One customer became three. Three became six. Battery swaps, brake pads, oil changes, small repairs people delayed until they found someone honest. Daniel still worked nights, still came home exhausted, still had doubts some mornings. But now the exhaustion felt different. It came from building, not decaying. He learned to schedule jobs, order parts cheaply, speak with confidence, and charge without apology. Some customers were difficult, some repairs went wrong. Some weekends were slow, but even frustrating progress felt better than perfect stagnation. He noticed something else. The more he acted, the quieter fear became. Not because courage erased it, because movement starved it. Months earlier, fear sounded like truth. Now it sounded like an old recording in another room. Late one morning, Daniel looked at grease on his hands and smiled. Years ago, those hands belonged to a man with dreams. Now they belonged to him again. Small beginnings often hide life-changing endings. One morning after shift, Daniel stopped at a diner he had passed for years. Same parking lot, same neon sign, same tired road. He used to drive by feeling trapped, convinced life happened somewhere else to luckier people. Today he walked inside smiling. The waitress recognized him. "You're the mechanic guy now, right?" Daniel laughed softly. Not yet, but the words stayed with him. The mechanic guy now. He sat by the window and watched commuters rush past with coffee cups and distracted faces. Nothing outside had changed. Traffic was still traffic. Bills still existed. The city had not opened secret doors overnight. What changed was the lens he used to see it. Opportunity had always been nearby. Neighbors needing help, used cars needing repairs. People willing to pay for honesty, small openings everywhere. Fear had hidden them. For years, he begged life to change while protecting the thinking that kept him stuck. Now he was changing first, and the same world looked completely different. That morning, Daniel felt something he had not felt in years. Early, not late. 6 months after his first customer, Daniel asked to meet his warehouse manager. Same office, same grey walls, same desk where schedules and overtime forms had sat for years. But Daniel entered as a different man. His manager looked up. "Everything all right?" Daniel placed an envelope on the desk. Inside was his notice. The manager stared at him. "You found another security job?" Daniel smiled. "No, I'm building my own business." For a moment, neither man spoke. Then the manager leaned back and said quietly, "I always wondered when you'd remember you were meant for more." Daniel thanked him and walked out carrying less weight than he had in years. His income was not guaranteed, his future was not certain. There was real risk now. But there was also ownership. That night, driving home after his final shift, sunrise spread across the highway in gold. He had watched hundreds of sunrises tired, numb, and half asleep. This one felt different. Because for the first time, he was not driving home from something draining him. He was driving towards something he chose. A year later, the small garage Daniel rented had 2 service bays and his name above the door. Brooks Auto Repair. Not a giant empire, not millions of dollars, not the fantasy success people post online. Something better. A life that belonged to him. Some months were hard, some repairs were difficult. Money was not always easy, but struggle feels different when it serves purpose. Daniel still had problems. He simply had his own now. Sometimes people asked how long he had been in business. He smiled and said, "Not long enough." What he meant was simple. He should have started years earlier. But regret no longer ruled him, because he learned what most people learn too late. Starting late is painful. Never starting hurts longer. Maybe your story is not about cars. Maybe it is a skill you buried, a business idea you mocked, a talent you abandoned to become practical. Listen carefully. Fear often speaks in the voice of responsibility. It says wait. It says later. It says be grateful for less. It sounds safe while quietly stealing years. You do not need a miracle, you need movement. One honest hour, one uncomfortable step, one promise kept when no one is watching. That is how trapped lives begin to open. Not with certainty, not with permission, not when fear disappears. They open when someone gets tired of repeating the same small story and interrupts it. So ask yourself, What have I been calling impossible that is really just uncomfortable? Then begin badly if you must. Begin tired, begin with doubt, begin with little money. But begin. 1 year from now, you will either be explaining why nothing changed or standing inside a life that once looked impossible. If this reached something real inside you, write. Starting in the comments. Sometimes one word is enough to mark the day a person stopped shrinking